Good evening, I'm Bruce Dumont. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. You are watching Political Forum, and this is your opportunity to speak directly to political leaders and civic leaders, which we will hear from this evening, both right here on CanTV 21 and also live online at cantv.com/hotline. And again, we'll also be taking phone calls for the next hour at 312-738-1060. 312-738-1060 if you would like to engage with our guests, and we have some very interesting people with interesting backgrounds. First of all, we have Demetrius Nash, he's on the far end, and Lieutenant Davina Ward of the Chicago Police Department, but most importantly, she's with a group called N.O.B.L.E, which is a national organization of black law enforcement. She's here representing that group, not the city of Chicago or the police department. And I want to begin with you, Demetrius.
Yes, sir.
You're a very interesting story. You recently returned on a walk from Chicago to Washington, D.C. to raise attention about the crime in Chicago and the violence in Chicago.
Yes, particularly.
You got to Washington.
Yes.
Who saw you?
Well, just for starters, John Lewis and Robert Kelly did my press conference on Capitol Hill. So I was cooking with grease. I wasn't just boiling water. It was an amazing trip. It was a journey that I'll never be the same, and it was about gun violence specifically. I have an initiative that I'm looking to launch right now, Replace Guns with Hammers. That's getting young men out of the streets into the trades. Specifically, the targeted group is the young men with guns in their hands right now, hopelessness in their eyes. I touched the 1,600 that the mayor is always touting about 1,600 of these high-risk individuals do most of the crime in Chicago. And I'm talking to those guys every day. I'm in the trenches with them, or in the mud, or however we put it from in the hood. I'm right there with them every day. I go out of my way to talk to them because I feel like it's very disrespectful to say you speak for people or about a people that you don't engage. It's time for us as a community to come out of our comfortable homes, churches, and jobs and stop having this attitude of not my child, not my problem.
I want to ask Lieutenant Ward. You've been with the police department for over 20 years. You have engaged with the populations of Chicago. You've heard stories about people who did wrong and now want to do right. So Demetrius isn't necessarily a new story to you. I think he's a unique story, which we'll get into.
Yes.
But it's not a news story. And so there's a lot of organizations out there in the wake of the lead up to the Jason Van Dyke trial. There was street demonstrations, expressways were shut down. And a lot of people popped up as leaders. I'm leading this group. I'm leading that group.
Right.
Are there too many leaders? Does there need to be a focus on coming up with a singular group where all the groups can get together so the public knows and even elected officials know that there's a concerted effort and it's not just a lot of small organizations trying to do their good work, but maybe there would be stronger numbers if they got together.
You just said it. I think that we're stronger in numbers. You do see a lot of individuals, like Mr. Nash said, you see a lot of individuals saying that they represent the community, and they really don't. A lot of them, in my eyes, they represent themselves, not the community, not those who are hurting, those who are in need. I think that if they did come together, though, and, come to, bring some ideas together, one mind, one likeness, then we would be stronger. They would be able to do a lot more.
How much of this, Demetrius, is ego? Speak to the same issue, because when you have a group and it's a nonprofit, you want to put your best foot forward, but again, you've got a lot of other people that are hoping for that camera or that microphone.
Right. Well, one of the things I found was when we first got out there about Laquan McDonald, right? The biggest thing we were saying was we wasn't going to be about like our elders, right? But I looked up and those cameras came and the fame came, and I looked up and I saw that we were just like our elders. And so ego to me is edging God out of our lives.
Yes.
It's an acronym, edging God out. So the more you deal with ego, the less God and the more man is what you're showing, and it's exactly
When you said you became more like your elders, can you explain?
Well, you know, in the black community, you know, quote unquote, sell out this, sell out that. It's very hard to fight for a community that where people are hurt people are hurting people. It's hard to love people that don't love themselves.
Yes.
And so when you talk about like our elders, you know, the biggest thing was, you know, this person sold us out, or this person is a sellout, or Uncle Tom, or however you want to put it. And one thing I found was those cameras are addicting. You know, you get in this thing where you constantly want to get out in front, and your we becomes an I. And it's nothing wrong with being in front of cameras, because you have to get your message out, but it has to be an all-inclusive message. It can't just start. It just can't be start from we, and then I did this or I did that. And that's why I'm not part of any organization. I was just a concerned young man that came out my bed and saw a young man that was shot 16 times. When you hunt, you only shoot an animal once. You try to get one shot, one kill, or the meat is bad, or you can't use the fur. So for me, to see Laquan be shot like that, it just did something internally to me.
Lieutenant, speaking about who gets the microphone, who gets the camera, in this day and age, I'm certainly old enough, and I think you could probably relate when you were a very young girl, to the fact that if anything happened to the black community or to any African American in Chicago, the only person who ever popped up was Jesse Jackson. He's the only person that the television stations went to, and he was the guy in Chicago, just like Al Sharpton was the guy in New York that everybody went to. And he used that power to become more famous, and every time he became more famous, there would be more microphones that would come to him. What would you say to those who work in media today, who are the assignment editors? When a story breaks where someone is shot, you know, on the west side or south side or even north side, what advice would you give to those editors, many of them who are Caucasian? What advice would you give to them on how do you find the real spokesman for that community? Someone who is indigenously involved, not just showing up because they happen to be in the Rolodex of the assignment manager.
Well, first of all, I would say before you even get to the point of trying to interview someone about a person shot, know about that area, know about that community, know about that neighborhood, know who are the community activists that are true community activists, not the ones who just want to be in front of a camera each time a person gets shot. Let me just say this, because when someone does get shot, sometimes in the district that I work in, we sometimes don't see the news media come out there and say, or the activists come out there and say, okay, this person got shot, or an elderly lady got shot. They only want to focus on certain people who get shot, as opposed to anybody who gets shot in the neighborhood. The other day, an elderly woman who was just coming home from church, bringing home groceries, got caught in a crossfire, and she got shot. But no one said anything about that. So,
in recent, it's horrible, but 6 out of 7 nights, if you're watching television in Chicago, the lead story is that somebody got shot, and there's a grieving, weeping African American mother, grandmother, aunt. It's usually the female in the family who is crying about the loss of their child. They all think their child is innocent. They are bystanders to violence. How accurate is that portrayal? Because this to me gets to a broader issue of how many people in the community really know that there's a finger to be pointed, and they get pointed to somebody, but they don't seem to do that. I want to get both of your thoughts on that. Demetrius?
Well, first of all, there's 2 issues. There's police violence in the community, which is a separate issue from the crime that's affecting the community,
right?
Black on black, for lack of a better term.
Right.
So when you say the violence in the community, it makes us hold ourselves accountable, and very few people really want to hold that mirror up.
Yes.
it takes on a bigger responsibility, because just like with this issue with Jason Van Dyke, you saw a lot of the community after the 2-year-old. It was a 2-year-old shot. It was a
Yes.
young black man young black kid that was going to college. It was a college bound kid. He was shot at a visual, and then the 81-year-old lady, in which it was 75 bullet casings outside. They shot 75 times, and they only shot the elderly lady and murdered her. So when it's a blue code and it's a community code, and that is very tough to break the silence in our communities. And it requires us to look at ourselves. It requires some of us to really tell on ourselves, because we are some of the killers. Some of our children are some of the killers. Some of our friends are some of the killers. And it's very difficult.
But is it a common denominator here, whether it's blue silence, the police code, or the code in the neighborhood, is that nobody likes a snitch?
Yeah.
Isn't that common enough? I mean, I would assume that some of the police officers that came and testified in the Jason Van Dyke trial, who really provided a story that did not sit well with the defense, I can imagine that those police officers don't have an easy life today. Because they will be viewed as, instead of just being viewed as someone that told the truth about what they saw, they'll be viewed as somehow snitching on Officer Van Dyke.
Well, I sometimes am a watch commander, and I tell my officers, right off the bat, if you see something, that is not right, you need to make sure you tell somebody. Tell a sergeant, tell a lieutenant. I'm always making myself available. And I tell them, I haven't gotten this far just by turning my back or looking the other way. And I worked in internal affairs at one time for 2 years. So I told them, there were times when I had to say, hey, this officer did wrong, and I have to, make sure they get the punishment that they deserve. So,
Where are you the watch commander?
sometimes in the 3rd District.
Which is?
7040 South Chicago, Cottage Grove, rather.
Active.
Yes.
Active district.
Yes.
We have a caller on the line. Let's go to them right now. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, well, I wanted to ask this. I've heard a lot of talk about sort of community violence as well as police violence, and I feel like, and I wanted to get both panelists' opinions, that sometimes we do a disservice when we try to equate the two. I think the two are different. One is obviously carried out by civilians, but the other is carried out by like state paid actors, and I just wanted to know if they agree with that assessment, that it is different and there should be a higher standard for people who are supposed to be protecting us, or is all violence sort of bad violence that should be denounced?
Lieutenant, is there a higher standard for police?
Well,
Should there be?
Put it like this. I mean, we are put on a pedestal in terms of being who we are as law enforcement officers. They expect us to do the right thing at all times. And when you do have those officers that do wrong, then yes, they should be punished for it. That's just my opinion, my personal opinion. When they do wrong, they definitely should be punished for it.
Demetrius?
I feel like all violence is wrong when it's done wrong, and let's just keep it all the way real. Police are more than their job title. They want to go home too.
Yes.
In this environment, it's very hard to be a police officer right now. And I tell the young men, because like I said, I'm dealing with the savages, the hyenas, or whatever they call themselves, right? And I tell them, I say, y'all always want to be quick to say F the police. But if the police about to save your mother, do you want your mother to die? Because F the police mean that man shouldn't get out his car to save your mom, because it's already F the police. But what my argument is we both, on both sides, community side and the police side, have to humanize each other. The police officers that are coming into our community that aren't from our community got to stop looking at most young black men as criminals. But also on the other side of that, our community have to appreciate the fact that instead of running away from a situation, they run to it.
Yes.
And they put their lives on the line for us. Now, we have all bad apples on both sides of the fence.
That's right.
That is not a reflection of the whole. 99% of police officers wake up and want to do the best job they can. 99% of our community wake up and want to be productive citizens.
Yes.
So we got to humanize each other. So yes, there is a difference with a police officer because he's paid and he should be trained, and there's a higher level of a skill set with a firearm. And you should know when that once the threat is gone, it's over with. And it's still a room for, your adrenaline, this and that is still going. So it's still like a complicated thing when you're in the heat of the moment. But your trainer should step in and you should be on autopilot for that. But it is devastating to the community what we do to ourselves as well. Like I said, I could protest Jason Van Dyke shooting Laquan McDonald, but that same year, 4,400 of us were shot and 772 murdered by our hands. So we have to get on top of that as well.
Last week, Jesse White, the Secretary of State, was here, who's been involved in community affairs, with the Jesse White tumblers for much of his public life. He responded to a question that I asked about what African American parents could and should be talking to their kids about, as well as the kids should be talking amongst themselves. If the police officer tells you to stop, stop. Mm-hmm. If he tells you to drop something, drop it. Now that sounds like, as someone who isn't involved in this every day, that sounds like a very simple thing to say. Why does that apparently not get through, Lieutenant?
I think what happens is that in this day and age, I think the young adults that call themselves millennials, and I'm telling you this because I'm experiencing it for myself, that a lot of them feel as though, they're this new movement. This is what I want to do, this is what needs to be done, this is what I'm gonna do, and what's been going on before I got here is no longer acceptable. We have a new thing that we're gonna do, and it's all about what we want, not about what everybody needs and what everybody wants. It's about what we want. Like he said, you have those who think about just me, I. It's never about us. Mm-hmm. It's all about me. And I think
but also, is it a feeling that many young African Americans feel disrespected by the police? The police.
Without a doubt.
So
without a doubt.
My question is, if someone is running away, and whether they've committed a crime or not, if they're running away, and a police officer tells them to stop, what's going through their minds if they don't stop, Demetrius?
Well, my whole thing, going back to a little bit before that, it's a lack of a respect of authority. Mm-hmm. It's not even just about the police.
Right.
These school teachers, mm-hmm. anyone that says anything against what they want to do,
period. Yes.
They don't care. It's D. Nash coming out and saying something that they don't want to do. So, when you're running from a case or you're not going to stop. It's just not going to happen when you're a criminal and you're trying to get away. You just doing whatever. But at the end of the day, if they're running away and not posing threat, is a difference.
But what about if they're innocent? Sometimes people are running, they don't stop even if they're innocent.
I mean, it's just the climate of the community. You have some of these kids that's been programmed to say that not to trust police officers.
Right.
And that's another thing. I've been pushing for Officer Friendly to come back into our school system. Because at the end of the day, I'm 40 years old, right? I had Officer Friendly come in, and that was my first interaction with a police officer. Now, a lot of these kids, and we need to almost put in legislation that says it's illegal to lock up anyone in 8th grade on down. Because now you have, for little skirmishes on the schoolyard and this and that, you have actually police officers coming to grammar schools and locking these young men and women up. And when that is your first interaction with the police, it messes you up for the rest of your life.
Our phone number is 312-738-1060. 312-738-1060 if you'd like to join in conversation with Demetrius Nash and also Lieutenant Davina Ward. She is with N.O.B.L.E, which is the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement. Demetrius Nash is a community activist. And again, we're going to spend just a couple of minutes now talking about your very unique background.
Yes,
you are an ex-offender. You are an ex-offender, but you went to Culver Military Academy. You did not come from the lower economic scale.
Well, I did. I did.
But
I
you
was
made
just,
it to Culver Military Academy.
yeah, on full scholarship.
Oh, full scholarship.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, give us the short version.
Oh, the short.
You were apparently on the right track.
Yeah, yes, sir.
What happened?
Up under everybody knows back in like 93 and that when I went to high school, Kosminski on 53rd and Ingleside was really had a gifted kids program where they were sending kids throughout the country to private boarding schools. Now I ducked the program for maybe a couple of months, and my dad at the time, he worked on Amtrak, so he'll be home 3-4 days, come home, and one day he caught the phone call. And he looked at me, and this was a time when you didn't have an opinion as a kid.
That's right.
You know, and I saw a look on his face, and he hung up the phone, and he said, well, you know you're going to be in that class, the gifted program class, come Monday, right? Or whenever he found out the next day or whatever. I said, yes, sir. The jig was up. I had to be in it. So I end up going to Culver. I wanted to go to Kenwood. At the time, Kenwood was a great school. I looked at Culver Military as a punishment. I didn't look at it as a opportunity.
Right.
You know, then I'm thrust into this very affluent world. These kids are the top 1%. Right. Of America. Their children, they're paying for it. I'm on scholarship. I feel like I'm not enough. And all the things that you wait to experience in college, I was experiencing it freshman year of high school, from racism to feeling inadequate to being away from home, not being able to come home until holidays and all these things. And so I did everything to get kicked out. Worst mistake of my life. I came back and I saw immediately that CPS was failing us. I went to Wendell Phillips on 39th before, you know, now it's cool to go there. You know, the football team is winning, so they giving them a lot of funds for school and this and that. I went and it was nightmare on Elm Street. These young men and women were fighting every day, the projects versus this project. And I was used to 2.5 hours, 3 hours of homework every day, and I don't even remember a homework assignment my entire senior year.
You ended up going to federal prison for 8 years.
Yes, sir.
What did you do?
Well, thank God I went to the feds, if I could say thank God I went to the feds. It saved my life. For 8 years, from 18 to 26, I destroyed lives. At one point on 35th and State, I was one of the biggest drug dealers doing $30,000 a day in heroin sales. At one point, I destroyed lives. And for every day that I destroyed lives, God kept me in bondage for 8 years. But in the federal system, I was able to get up under some of the, lack of better terms, the highest of criminality in America goes to the feds. You got to think, the federal system was made for white guys like yourself. It wasn't made for hardened criminals. So when I first went into the federal system, I was on the camp level, and I actually had miniature golf. You know, some were back in the 70s and 80s, some of the camps, the federal camps had swimming pools. So, but it saved my life.
And I think it's important to say for those, because I have acquaintances who have had experiences similar, both in state and federal, and they just said, you said the federal system saved your life, because in many cases, if you go into general population in state prisons, your life is considerably worse than if you were in a similar circumstance in federal prison.
Well,
your term may be longer, but your life is not quite as personally threatening. Would you say that's accurate?
I mean, for me, it wasn't even about that. It was the dumb road that I was going down.
Yeah.
I was either going to get a lot more time or I was going to be dead in the streets. So whether I went to state jail or federal jail, it would have saved my life personally. But there is a difference. And, you know, you still got educational programs in the federal system. You can still go to college. You got vocational skill trainings in some of these federal institutions. Whereas in the state, all you get is a GED, and then you're. And then another thing, the difference about the state and the feds is people from everywhere. So I just tucked up under men that were very much had more experience than me, and were way more smarter than me. And I shared, learned, and grow with them, and I came back determined to be the change that I wanted to see in our city.
And you went about reading, you read about Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
Inspiration.
I read
27 years in prison.
Yeah, Long Walk to Freedom. And then I came home and we were these young men was calling themselves savages and we're Chirac, and I'm like, hold on, we come from a gangster and a gentleman town, a well balanced a Chicago man or woman is a well balanced person. They not this or that. We know how to put on suits. We know how to put on our boots and lace them up when it's time to go to war. Like when you call yourself a savage and we're from Chirac, you have to live up to those names. And these young men are really living up to that. They are savage. And so I just go out my way to be the change that I want to see. And I talk to these young men and I engage them. And that's why I can come on these shows and speak intelligently and informative, because I talk to them.
Lieutenant, do you think there's a status amongst some young black men, and the status is that they've served time? That there's so many people in the neighborhood who have served in that way, that maybe there's a status to it. I want to get Demetrius's response as well.
I will say, by me working in a lot of the fast districts that I've worked in, some of the guys that I've talked to, because they'll tell you, I get out the car, I'll talk to them. They've been shot multiple times, 2 and 3 times, and it's nothing to them. It's nothing. Or I'll go to jail. It's to them. It's nothing. And I constantly talk to them and just ask them, at what point are you going to get tired? Are you going to get tired of saying, I don't want to go to jail anymore? I don't want to get shot anymore. At what point are you going to start saying,
is jail safer than prison to some of them?
For some, yeah.
Safer than
for some of them, they may say, actually, yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. I actually have friends that I care so much about, and I was relieved when they were in jail. Mm-hmm. Like, I was like, I don't want him to be in jail, but I know he's safe. Because the road that he was going down, that he was about to, all I saw was jail for forever, and I'm never going to see my friend again, or a graveyard. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like, and I talk to these young men, I just feel like us as a community and as a city, we doing a poor job with giving alternatives to what's going on. 3500 South looked very different than 3500 North. There are a lot of resources and a lot of allocations of funds near North Side and now that South Loop. And what I tell people is, to the least of us that it is done, it affects all of us. Now, you have, they took the projects knowing that they had dispersed a lot of people that lived in a bubble, that had a project mentality, that doesn't have good social skills nor conflict resolution. But they looked up 50 years, 60 years later, that was some of the most prime real estate in Chicago. Those project areas. Mm-hmm. So now you take that, you don't change the mindset, and you disperse these people throughout the city, and that's where you have a lot of this violence. Because traditionally they had their own high school, grammar school, and they were their own gangs. So say you had GDs right here, and then you had Black Disciples, and then you had the Blackstones really over east, where on the east side of Chicago. Right. So they gave them vouchers and moved all those people over on the east side. But now there's a direct conflict. And they don't know how to have great conflict resolution, so all they know is violence. So you have an uptick in all the violence.
Is this a situation, though, when you look at the projects, mm-hmm. when they were built back in the 50s, right. Early 60s, mm-hmm. It looked good on paper. But somebody in the federal government was trying to socially engineer the way people are going to live. And they thought, people live in high rises all over the country, they get along. They didn't talk about the difference in their resources, the difference in their education, the difference in some of the incentives that were put in there for the father to leave the house.
Exactly.
And so this was Big Brother government trying to help those that needed help. And they really screwed it up.
They ruined the family.
So my question to you is, how can the government, whether it's the city government, state government, or federal government, how can they be believed by the African American communities as to any new idea that they had, like the one you just referenced? I mean, you're asking them to believe in a government solution, and the previous one didn't work.
Well, let me go back, because a lot of people, when they see me as a police officer, they think I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. So let me just clarify this. 3517 South Federal. That's where I was from. Stateway Gardens.
Yes.
Then 4445 South Evans, Washington Park Homes. Mother, father, married, 2 kids, me and my brother. Both of them worked. Back then, when I grew up, back then in the projects, when I grew up, both parents worked. Both parents were not on financial assistance. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
We were going to a Catholic school. So back then, and that was back in the 60s and the 70s, back then, it wasn't a bad place at that point. Everyone looked out for each other. We had green grass. We could stay outside late. We can, we can do all those things.
We were community.
We were a community. Then after that, what changed after that?
Drugs.
Thank you. And I'm going to say, I'm glad you said that, because my father, he got a hold of him. Heroin addict. God rest his soul. That's what killed him. So when drugs came into the project, into our community, that's what broke up the family.
Yep.
That's what broke up a lot of the things, because there was resources there. We had resources. We had a lot of things. We were, and I don't want people to think that we were just so happy being in the projects. That's not what it was. What you saw back in the 90s was not what it was back in the 70s.
Right. Well, they also changed the rules about how much you paid for your apartment. It was about, which sort of forced a lot of men out of the house because the rent would be.
Well, this will force the men out the house. Really, when we came up north from the migration of the South, they gave us the projects, because you got to think, Chicago is still the most segregated city in the United States.
Right.
So there were mechanisms that said, we're not going to let you move here, move there, move here, move there. So we only had to be in the projects, right? So, but welfare.
It was political control.
It was political control, but also it was also the welfare system. The welfare system did kick the black man completely out the house immediately. Like, if you're gonna get this money, this and that, and instead of us staying strong together, the black woman takes the subsidy, and then the black man is kicked out. And then you have, now the project become bad, because now you have all these teenage young boys and men growing up with no father figure and no strength, and then the drugs come in. So that's where the black family was taken. But back to your question, are we going to allow the government to come in? At this point, we don't need the government. We need black men and women to come out of their comfortable homes, churches, and jobs. And where your time and your body can be, your resources can. Donations of money. I mean, there's a lot of black wealth in our community. It's a lot of people, but now we got to come back and buy the block, because for so long, traditionally Bronzeville was our stronghold in Chicago, but Roseland, and we stopped. We didn't create Blacktown, right? We didn't create a black town. We did at one point, but then we started thinking like we have to move out to the suburbs to be, quote unquote, feel like we're better than the rest. And it made us not have the wealth in our community. We don't service our community. We're one of the only communities that don't really service our community. We don't own gas stations. We don't own grocery stores. We don't own cell phone service providers. We don't own these things. Every other race eats off our community besides us.
What's the answer to that in your view? Why is that not the case somewhere?
I mean, because when you have grown up, our children can't be what they can't see. So that's what I call, and I'm glad to meet you, because I call for that. I call for intergenerational conversation, and then intergenerational sharing of the resources, sharing of the wealth, sharing of, like, everybody, when you poor, all you think, you have this poor mentality and everything is money. No, some things are positioning. Some things are just being in this room right now and someone listening and hearing and making a call and say, I can help you replace guns with hammers. So
but your point about other communities drawing together and whether it's the local 7-Eleven or the grocery
Chinatown
store.
Look at Chinatown.
But my question to you is, because you also said, and I agree with this, there is significant African American wealth in this country. Is this another example where that wealth is divested, it's spread too thin, as opposed to having a summit meeting of African American wealth and says, you know what, our goal is to provide opportunities for food stores. I mean, we always hear about food deserts in the black community.
Exactly.
Maybe food stores is an area that African Americans could.
Or maybe not even food stores. How about teaching
Health clubs,
some of
whatever it is.
our men and women how to grow their own vegetables?
Yes.
How about teaching our kids how to grow vegetables and how to, take care of the home, like he said, from guns to hammers, how to build a home,
Right.
how to build something. And I want to bring N.O.B.L.E into this, because what N.O.B.L is doing, again, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, we are a bunch of black African American executive officers, be it officers, sergeants, lieutenants, chiefs, deputy chiefs, even superintendents. We're trying to do something different in the black community. We have what you call the law in your community, in which what we're doing now is going out to grammar schools, going out to churches, going out to community organizations, and we're saying, okay, we're also tired of killings. So we want to teach you what some of this stuff means. We want to teach you what a misdemeanor is, what an assault is, what a battery is. So we actually go into the schools and we teach these kids, and then we give them the booklet and say, here, this is yours. We teach them, what do you do when you get stopped by the police? What are you supposed to say? How are you supposed to act? Only because we're saying, listen, we want you to get home to your parents safely. We want, and it's not just the kids. It's adults also.
Yes.
We want everyone to get home, to
the
the
family
kids
together.
safely. And all we're saying is, always be calm and respectful. No matter what. If the officer is up here, you need to be just calm and respectful. If there's something that goes wrong, make sure you get that star number, make sure you get that plate number, but then again, if you're going to file a report, you got to follow through. Again, I was in IAD, and there's enough people of our people going to houses, sending letters, making phone calls. They wouldn't follow through. They'd get mad and say, oh, I want to get that officer, I want to do this and do that.
Completion.
But when it came down to it, they never followed through. They never, I could tell you, I don't know how many cases I had that I had to close because they never followed through. And I kept them open for almost a year. So.
You want to make a comment on that?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
The next point would be when you're talking about, this gets back to, police training as well. How did the verdict in the Jason Van Dyke trial play in your district? How did black and white officers respond to that, and did they respond to it in the same way?
Well, in our district, we had recently had another shooting in the 3rd district off 71st and Jeffrey. So, of course, we had a lot of protest over there. Before the verdict came out, of course, we had, and it wasn't even the community. That's the thing. As Mr. Nash said, you had people coming from other communities, coming in our community, and some of them was actually inciting and antagonizing and doing some things, because the people in the community would actually come and tell us, you guys are doing a good job here. We know you guys. We know you guys work here. We don't want them in our community. So it was the outside people coming in and protesting and saying nasty things.
Are they gang members, or are they
No. It's a
activity?
political group. Whatever group it was coming into those communities. And people would actually, that live in the community, was like, I can't get home. I can't do this, because they're coming, blocking the streets. They said, we didn't ask for this.
Do you agree with that?
I'm going to be honest. I didn't protest about Snoop being shot. I just felt like, this is what I felt. I felt that when he walked out his door, having only a FOIA card, when he crossed that threshold, it became illegal. And for me, I felt like, regardless of him being a barber, a father, this and that, he put himself in harm's way. When he made a decision that says, I have a FOIA card, I don't have a concealed and carry, I'm going to put this firearm on me along with 2 clips on my other side, you made a decision that put yourself in harm's way. When I saw the situation, did I want him to die? Did I feel like he should have been murdered for a decision like that? No. But at the end of the day, I really couldn't go out and protest about that, because I look at officers as also wanting to go home. And I felt like it was a very tense situation. It was a situation where you have a gun on you, you're running, it looks like from the tape you might have grabbed at the gun or whatever. However it went, I just couldn't put myself out there. Did I support my brothers and sisters that went? Hey, that's your thing. I didn't protest that. I protested and speak about things that are true to my heart and that I can, because at the end of the day, when a police officer walks out, they're risking life, health, and freedom. When a protester goes out there on a protesting line, you're risking life, health, and freedom. I had to do stuff that I will go all the way for. And that was just a situation where...
Have you seen some of the politically inspired folks that are involved here? Have you seen that in your? I mean,
you know, you have a lot of people that have all types of hidden agendas. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, you have people that are paid people to come out there to antagonize both sides.
Exactly.
You know, you have people that are paid to, when there's a press conference, to go over there and be a rebel rouser. So, you know, and that's why I'm not a part of any organization.
You're not a part of any organization, but you're a community activist. Mm-hmm. How do they get paid?
We don't, and that's the whole thing.
But how are you? First of all, when you came out, mm-hmm. How many from prison? How long ago were you released?
I was released in 2013.
Okay. So you had to get a job, right?
Yeah, I worked construction. Actually, I worked construction up until the point that I walked to the White House. I literally walked off my job to do the walk.
I know.
Took me 53 days.
Did you get your job back?
I haven't been back on a construction site since. I do a lot of public speaking.
Another question, something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned that you're 40 years old.
Yeah.
Most 17 or 18-year-olds don't listen to 40-year-old people, even if they have a phenomenal story of going to federal prison. Not that that's phenomenal, but it still is an intriguing story. Right. Does it scare anybody? I mean, when you talk about your prison experience, they say, oh my God, I never want to do that.
See, because the demographic that I'm touching, first of all, you got to love them where they at and then build them up to where you want them to be. One of the biggest rifts between our elders and the youngster is you speak at them instead of with them. Mm-hmm. You come in and tell them how much they're doing wrong and y'all messing up society and it's not like this, and you got all these old stories. I don't have none of that. I meet them where they are. You know, I go out of my way to be in these clubs with them and this and that, and I have the darndest conversations in the middle of the club. Like, they hear about my street side and they hear about the gun toting and all this craziness, but that's just a worm on the hook. When I get them in, I'm like, look, you don't even know I went to private boarding school. You don't know I did this. You don't know. And it's like they're tired. They are honestly tired. Lil Durk. You know, I took them. We just had a back to school thing. You know, I did that.
Oh, okay.
I argued with CPD for a week about how they were not going to be bodyguards for Lil Durk. It ended up being an incredible event. One thing about it, like I was telling the officers that were in charge, I say sometimes you got to learn when there's a moment to endear yourself to the community. We get the arrest and shoot, but we need to start getting over to that protect and serving. And part of your job is to serve, and part of your job is sometimes to go out of your way when you're dealing with a people that are hurting. And for a long time, community and police and relationships has been so splintered. Yes. So this was a time where I thought we were going to get to the point where, you know, they was like, yeah, you know, this and that. All I heard was he this and JoJo and this and all this gang stuff, but I made them do their job. And they did it, and they did it well. And we had an incredible event, and to see the kids actually get a backpack from Lil Durk. And he actually sent me $6,000 to get all the backpacks together and all that.
What is the role, Lieutenant, of rap stars and celebrities, athletes and non-athletes? What's the role they can play in improving the rebuilding of relations between many in the black community and the police departments?
Well, basically, a lot of these young kids look up to these rappers, whether they're the rappers from the hood or the rappers who have made money.
Yep.
They look up to them. They know the words, the lyrics, verbatim. They see their actions, what they wear, what they do, and they want to emulate them. And I think what happens is that I understand this is what you want to do, this is your profession, but there should be something outside of that, like Chance the Rapper. I really like the fact that he comes out and he goes, okay, this is what my career is, but you know what? There's some mental health things going on in Chicago, and they've cut the mental health money, the funding. So I'm going to give $1 million. Hey, there's something going on with the CPS schools. I'm going to give $1 million. I think when you do something like that as a rapper, be it a small-time rapper or a big-time rapper, then kids will start looking up to you and see there's some positives and say, he did it, maybe I can do it, even as a rapper. But there's so much hardcore rap out there and so much, I'm a bang bang and shoot you. And then the kids say, oh, okay, that's okay to do. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. And they look up to these rappers.
Yeah.
Is there any way that the broader community can address some of those images that are perpetuated just to make a buck on young black and white teenagers?
For me, I try to get them to understand their responsibility in the moment. Hindsight is 20/20 means you missed the opportunity, right? So my whole conversation is, you like the hood reporter, but there's a responsibility that comes with your platform. We've always had, rap music that was just speaking about, we had the NWAs,
Right.
but then we also had the Public Enemies.
Right.
And for a long time, the Chance the Rappers, they weren't getting a lot of celebrity. So now they are. But, that Chance doesn't touch the ones that are the problem. Right?
That's true.
So he's touching those kids that may be on the cusp of going
that way, but yeah, you're right.
So I'll be with the hyenas. I'll be with the ones that's right here in it. And I tell them, look, bro, on the other side of that, I need you to go in these schools. I need you to tell these kids it's all right to be police officers, firemen, and I want you to tell them it's all right to respect authority and teachers and this and that. And not just, and when you think about a kingdom, first of all, we put too much into entertainment.
Yes.
I believe, because if you look at the kingdom, the entertainments are the gestures. They're not the wise men. It's time for local people, businessmen, women, our pastors, our politicians, the thinkers of our community to come together, set a black agenda, because we don't have one. If you ask 20 of the greatest minds in black America, it's going to be 20 different agendas. We need a black agenda. We need something that unifies us. I'm not Democrat or Republican. Let's just put that out there. I'm for my people.
Is there, this week, one of the big stories is going to be when Kanye West goes to visit the White House tomorrow. And Kanye West has said he wants to move back to Chicago, become more involved here.
Already.
He has already. So my question to you is, how should he be believed? Because he's very controversial. Is he one that will reach the hyenas, as you referred to them?
Hyenas. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. But
that's your word. Okay, I'm just repeating your word.
At risk. The highest, the greatest is risk. I just, But anyway, the at-risk youth. I was asked that question when I made it to the White House. Would I go in? First of all, I wouldn't disrespect the highest office in the free world.
Was it this White House?
Yeah, it was this White House. I just did that last year.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, August 4th.
Did you talk to the president, or you?
Nah. I didn't, only because.
How close did you?
Well, I got congressmen.
Jared Kushner? Did you get to Jared?
Nah, I didn't get to none of the administration. But my whole thing is this: Kanye and his wife already got a black lady exonerated from jail.
Yes.
That had been in there and was going to spend the rest of her life in there. So there is some method to the madness.
Yeah.
A lot of people see, this is the thing about freedom of speech. we want freedom of speech until it says something against what we believe in, right?
Yeah.
So when he made the comment about George Bush, everybody, rah, rah, yeah. But when he made the comment that slavery was this, that, and the third, or was a choice, now it's boo. Look, this is what it is. He's a smart man. He's a genius in what he does as far as music. He's using his platform.
So we can make a difference in Chicago, you think?
I believe so. I believe he could if given the right people around him. See, because
Now, what is the relationship? Maybe you don't know. What is the relationship between Kanye West and Chance the Rapper? In other words, is the ego
Nah,
involved?
they incredible. They're making an album together.
That's great.
Like they're great.
So they could be a dynamic duo in Chicago that no one is putting on the political radar at the moment.
Well, they are on the political radar. But at the end of the day, it still has to be those grassroots people like myself,
Right.
and that are empowered,
Right.
Because it has to be like I'm the perfect liaisons for her. Because I'm the boots on the ground. Even though she's in the community every day, I get the conversations that they'll never give to her.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? Like, I get the conversations like, look, this is what's going on, ooh, this and that. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, we have to, I know that these kids are tired. I know they are because I'm looking them in their eyes. I know a person that's really about that life versus a person that feel like they don't have another alternative to that life. That's two different things working about.
It is.
Right.
It's kids that are about that life that you're not gonna save. Jail or dead, and it's sad to say, but that's what they want. You can't change
And
it.
they will tell you that.
They have mental health issues. They don't know how to deal with the fact that they done buried a friend a week for the last 3-4 years. This is what they're dealing with. But then you have those kids, which is about 80% of these kids out here, that if you give them an alternative and make that alternative cool, and they start getting likes on Instagram and Facebook, and that's another thing. In our community, we have to start championing the better things, and that's where we come in. We got to stop hitting that like button for young women that's twerking and fighting.
Yes, exactly.
We got to stop hitting that like button for young men that have the guns and the drugs and they off lean and they popping the pills and this and that on Instagram. And some of these parents are the problem.
Just about to say.
You know, some of these parents, like I literally said it one day. I said, look, don't start putting that graduation picture up when your children are shot. Killers are getting killed. We don't live in mansions. You know your son had a gun because you liked it on Facebook or Instagram.
Right.
So when you start having these conversations, these are the tough conversations.
Right.
But I walk to be able to talk. Period. I always tell, like, if like in jail, they used to say, they called me Shaq. You'll say anything to anybody. You don't care how big they are. Well, I was raised like that. If I see something wrong, I'm gonna say something. A lot of kids are followers. It was this thing back in the day was don't let your friend drink and drive. But it wasn't just about letting your friend drink and drive. It's don't let your friend do something stupid. It's don't let your friend in everyday life.
Right.
Like those type of images for me was more than that.
I want to confirm something that I thought I heard you say a couple of minutes ago. You have not met before. This is the first time.
No, this is the first time.
No.
It's the first
Well,
time.
I have to tell you,
And she can't get rid of me now.
I am a
Because
resident.
I need all those black, we need a nickel a day or something coming this way.
Well, I want to just say that I'm a resident of the city of Chicago, and I mentioned the horror of watching the news every night, and most of the time there's a grieving mother, usually African American, who has lost their son or daughter or a loved one, and so it bothers me what's happening to Chicago, the reputation of the city of Chicago, and also I think I'm delighted that I had the opportunity for the first time to meet today. I would suggest, Lieutenant, it's great to have you with us. You represent N.O.B.L.E, which is an organization, the National Organization for Black Law Enforcement, and again, Demetrius Nash, he is a community activist, but again, you're not here as an official member of the Chicago Police Department, but I would love to suggest that one of the things I think we do need is we need representatives like Lieutenant Ward representing the police East Department in the future, they've got to get out and have conversations like
Yes.
this. It's an important part because usually when something goes bad, the police department shuts up and doesn't want to let anybody talk. That only leads to further resentment and frustration. And again, we thank you very much for being with us. Demetrius Nash and Lieutenant Davina Ward, thank you very much. Be sure to catch this and all Political Forum shows at the website at the bottom of the screen, which is cantv.org//political forum. I'm Bruce Dumont. Thank you very much for joining us.